everybody. How are you? And welcome back to the only podcast produced by three two-time winners of IMSA's Spirit of the Race Award. You're tuned into the Check Engine Podcast. We're hosted on Anchor.fm, and we're streamed worldwide on all streaming platforms that you use to listen to your favorite podcasts. My name is Nick. Joining me, as they do each and every week, are my two pals, Andrew and Tristan, on the opposite ends of the line. Fellas, what's new?
Nothing. I feel like, weirdly, this is the first week in a while where there's been car news. So that's good.
Always a bonus.
That is good. We're starving for content lately, so that's fine. We'll take it. I had neat car news. I sent you guys messages over the weekend about it. But I don't have any like car news, but just more, hey, I saw some cool shit. So we'll get to that.
Stuff happened, it seemed like, to me anyways.
Yes, I also have neat in quotes car news. Hope everyone's ready for that.
Hooray. So Tristan's having a normal one is basically what he's telling you.
Tristan saw a car.
Well, it's what I've done before where it's like although they try, it's not neat.
Great.
Oh, trying to be neat car news. I get it.
Yes.
Well, Tristan, you want to? Well, before we do that, let's get into the main topic of tonight's episode. We've been on a racing kick recently, and last time out, we've fixed all the racing series. And everybody lived happily ever after. But we decided that we needed to build the best place for them to race. Is that right, Andrew?
I mean, kind of. It all started one day when I was taking a walk around the neighborhood, as you do.
I realized,
like a good dog. I realized that, like when they come and hot patch the cracks in the asphalt, there's a section as part of my neighborhood where, for some reason, most of the cracks ended up being somewhat circular. And there's a couple of them where I was like, you know what? That actually would not be a bad racetrack. So I thought, well, what would happen if we were to each build our own racetracks? What would they look like? What corners would we steal? All that good stuff. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight.
Building dream racetracks. And we've got a sneak preview of each other's and very different. So it's going to be a good episode. You guys went deep into like actually how long it was going to be. Like I paid
that's important.
Paid no attention to that when I built mine.
But I mean, if you don't know how long it is, how do you know
how long it is?
Yeah,
hey, it might be. Well, it just depends. Like you've seen it. We'll get into obviously details, but mine, like, kind of cut and paste from a lot of other tracks, and like it just depends. If it's to scale, it might be like one lap and a pit stop. It might be like a 35-mile lap. I'm not sure. But it's going to be a fun one. But before we get into that, we all kind of quick previewed it already. Let's start with some pace laps. Any car news? Andrew said you had some. Tristan and I both have neat car news. So Andrew, let's kick this off. What do you got?
Well, we didn't talk about this. Well, I guess it kind of came out at the end of last week. Georgia, the state, this was soon to be a complete and utter wasteland because of this decision, decided that teens will no longer need to pass a formal driving test to get a driver's license. And on the face of it, that kind of seems like it might be a little bit of a smart idea. But I think that might be the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my whole life.
So this is no written or no any test?
No formal test. So I honestly didn't even click on the article because I was like, oh my God, I just screen capped it. But there will definitely not be any in-car person to person. There will be no actual test of your driving ability.
Why?
Presumably because they're trying to lower the population. Get some of those pesky youths out of here.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's pretty par for the course at this point for them.
What it made me think of is, I mean, back in those heady days when we each were taking our driver's ed tests and classes and all that shit. So I took mine in a city I'd never been to.
Yeah, same.
In a car I'd never driven before.
Not that.
At a DMV where, I mean, well, we probably all took ours about the same time, just after the DMV here in Waukesha closed, and they moved it to Watertown. Watertown?
Yeah, I took mine in Watertown.
Yeah, it was Watertown.
Mine in Watertown, but the DMV was open when I got mine.
Interesting. Well, the thing was, they had just closed the one in Waukesha. So, one of the rumors flying about the school, right, was that driving instructors at Watertown were failing students for doing things that I guess on the surface may seem like a test, because Waterville has a lot of one-way streets. And so they would tell students to turn down the one-way streets, allegedly. And then, the conflicting stories, they would either fail you if you did it, or they would fail you if you pointed out that they were wrong. And this is the kind of person that they want to that Georgia thinks it's a good idea to just unleash them upon an unsuspecting populace.
Ugh.
Like the mere fact of rumor mongering about the driving test and saying things like, "Oh, the instructor failed me for not following instructions to turn the wrong way down a one-way road." Is that true? It's probably not, right?
I don't think it's true.
Well,
I don't know.
Mine tried.
Wait, oh, really?
I don't know if they just didn't know that it was a one-way street. Like if they work at the DMV there, but they live on the other side of town. They didn't get mad when I told them, no, it's a one-way street, but they asked me to turn down a one-way street. They didn't fail me for it, but they tried to get me to go down the street. They did take points off after I had to back up about 4.5 miles, and I was more than 12 inches from the curb, which I did find deeply unfair. It was the only
they deducted so many points for that.
It was the only points I lost on my driver's test, and it was because I backed up probably through an intersection if I had been paying attention. I was trying to stay close to the curb.
I want to say I lost 7 points or something.
Yeah, it was a lot. But yeah, they did try to send me down a one-way street. And yeah, so that was real. Now, whether that was on purpose, like they were trying to get people, gotcha, I don't know about that, but there were definitely instructors that were sending kids down one-way streets in Watertown.
That's crazy.
Well, maybe it's fine. Maybe George is making the right move here.
Well, we know that's not true.
No.
No. I think it's a bad idea, definitely.
It's a completely awful idea. The only points I got off in my driver's test were for parallel parking. And here's the deal. When I had my temps and I was going through all of the, you had the lessons, and I went to a private, the driving school outside of the high school. I did a different one. And I asked the instructor there a few times as we were driving around, what about parallel parking? And he's like, they don't test you on that anymore. Don't worry about it. So I did not parallel park once until I got to my driver's test in Watertown, and we were a block from the DMV, and I was in my mom's 2-door Monte Carlo, and they had me parallel park next to a Dodge Dually.
Nice.
So that was 11 points off because I failed that part miserably, and then I aced the rest of it.
See, they had me parallel park on an empty street and then do the straight line backing.
Yeah, same. That was me.
We probably had the same dude.
Probably. Maybe you learned from doing mine where the one-way streets were. I don't
know. Maybe. Anyways, it's been 90 minutes talking about our fucking driver's ed test.
Hey, more about us. It's interesting. People want to hear about us.
That's right. Here's another interesting thing. Last week we talked a lot about Mazda former car company. And so they put out some tweets that I don't understand. So this was on May 1st, and I don't know if that has anything to do with anything. So front to back, they were all within a minute of each other. So the first one is this: you and your Mazda will be back on the road soon. Until then, tell us how you love to drive. Normal.
Yeah, makes sense. That's all good.
The next tweets are all in a thread off the first one. The first one says airflow, : the next one says lightning, : and the next one could go either way. It might say Polish. It probably says polish. With a colon. Yeah, so if anyone wants to Hardy Boys that, now's the time.
So was that from Mazda's, like Mazda official put out those words in colons?
Mazda USA.
Mazda USA.
So airflow,
lightning
Polish. And Polish.
Is it lightning or lightening? Like as in making lighter?
No, lightning, like the
okay.
Like in a bottle?
Yes, got it.
Oh man.
Oh wait. Sorry. I forgot a key element of this. Oh god, I did this whole thing wrong. So in the first tweet, there's an image that asks, "What's your Mazda driving style?" Is it Polish?
Is it lightning?
Is it airflow? Okay, that doesn't help at all. Actually, I was wrong.
Lightning and polish, maybe.
Arguably.
I don't get airflow though.
I don't know.
Maybe.
I have no idea.
Were those tweets supposed to go out with pictures?
That's possible.
With the colon.
Maybe.
Post colon pictures.
I feel like the airflow thing has something to do with how they design the overall design language of the car. I'm trying to go back through the memory Rolodex, and I read somewhere about Mazda and how they design their cars with. Oh my god, I don't.
No, I think you're right, Nick. I think that's exactly right. Actually,
with lightning.
No,
yes, they designed the car with lightning, Tristan.
Well,
it's in that list. That's part of the whole answer.
And they have a Polish guy who's the lead designer.
They might.
No, but I can't put the pieces together right now. But there's the airflow. I want to say it hints at what their overall design language on their cars are, like throughout their breadth of line.
You're probably right, honestly.
But that's about as far as I can get.
Yeah.
Also, I'm burning precious brain calories on Mazda, so...
Again.
Why do we fall into that trap all the time?
They do trick us.
God damn you, Mazda. Wait, what?
Sorry, I was just on the Twitter machine. Some hot steamy news that I just learned.
Oh, gross.
So a person who actually follows us and has some pull in the automotive world, Rory Carroll, used to be at I forget which major publication. Was it maybe Road and Track? Sorry, Rory, I don't remember. He is taking up the post of EIC at Jalopnik officially.
Ooh.
He's doing his onboarding right now, actually, according to this tweet.
Awesome. Congrats, Rory.
Very instant. Congratulations.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. That's awesome. That's awesome that he follows us. Someone in that position follows us
for a while, too.
Work on some projects together, maybe?
Oh, God, wouldn't that be something? You know what? That's great. A target to shoot for.
Yeah, hey, we've got a contact. Worst they can do is say no. Yeah. If not, we can sick our 100 listeners on him.
That's right.
Beware our legion.
Mm-hmm.
Small but tough.
Anyways, sorry to completely derail the podcast yet
That's
again.
okay. That's all right.
It's the face slaps part.
That's all good. Tristan, do you want to go ahead with your neat car news that you have?
Yes, I actually have two. One one actually is very neat. I was just informed of it before the podcast, mere minutes ago. Andrew, you may recall the very cool Apple computer Porsche that we were discussing the other week.
The best.
My dad has a die cast of it.
Oh!
I want one.
No way!
I told you I was looking on eBay.
Apparently they are available. I will have him send you the information, but it's very cool. I'll send you guys pictures, and Nick, you can post them. Very neat. And in the less neat, or neat with more quotes, I was out for one of my very rare trips to run errands the other day, and I saw a...
Great story, man.
I'm thinking about it again, and I just hate it so much.
Spirit left your body.
You can hear it. It's like a fully like Fast and the Furious modified Ford Fusion.
Ugh.
You said what?
Ford Fusion. Like lowered straight pipe exhaust, noisy wastegate, way too much turbo noise, and like
four-door sedan?
Yes. Which I don't mind modifying four-door sedans, but like that's not the one. Like
gross.
Go for the whole like DTM look on your old Mercedes, or like, you know, there are ways to tastefully modify four-door sedans, and that ain't it.
What? Why?
I don't know, but the full like when the blow-off valve goes, like, just God. Anyway, now that my soul is gone, Nick, what did you see?
I think I saw stuff that was a little bit better than that.
Please bring my soul back.
I'll do my best, Tristan. So this past weekend was, beginning of a new month, and the whole genesis of this story came from the fact that we're like, oh yeah, hey, it's May 1st. Oh, Claire, isn't your rent due on May 1st? So obviously mailing it over the weekend isn't going to get there in time. So road trip down to Racine to drop Claire's rent off at her apartment office. And, also a chance to get out of the house. It was a really, really gorgeous weekend. And that's what brought out the cars I saw in one trip. This is not even a round trip. This is on the way to Racine. So in the course of about 55 minutes south, first we came upon a Ferrari 488 Spider going the opposite direction on Highway 16. I almost thought it was the Pista or the Tributo, because it looks so new. It was the newest one I've ever seen. It was a dark Merlot red too. It wasn't like your traditional Ferrari red.
Get behind that.
With tan, with like the tan or beige interior. Just gorgeous car. Not 15 minutes later, coming at us on a 2-lane highway was the brightest of bright white on white on white on white Audi R8 convertible.
Ooh.
Oh, so good. Tristan's soul has come back a little bit. That one worked.
That was it going back into my body.
The Ferrari wasn't going to work.
That was not it.
But know what you're talking about.
But
which Ferrari?
He didn't know.
The 488.
The red one.
But the Audi brought you back. So
Yes.
an R8. And then as I was at the gas station down in Racine, what drives past us but a silver 911 GT3 RS?
Ooh.
It was.
I wonder if we saw the same one, because I saw a silver GT3 RS somewhere around here recently.
I mean, they're not that popular. I mean, they're popular, but they're, it's not like you're seeing Civics, so odds are it's the same one.
Right?
I would put my money on it. But I just thought, man, I was just so happy for the warm weather. I'm like, everyone's bringing their cool cars out. This is the greatest road trip I've had in a long time, and it was only an hour. So that was my neat car news.
Tristan, you already did yours, right? Yes, you did.
Yeah, it was when my soul died, remember?
Well, I was trying to not remember it because it was a very sad moment for all. Here is one. Okay, I have another thing. I have another angle of attack on Nick and this whole fake hate for the C8 thing.
Oh, shit.
One last, prod. So the hybrid one, the Zora, will have over 1,000 horsepower, Nick.
Yep.
You coward. I hiss at you.
What reaction were you expecting?
Okay, listen. I feel like it's going to be more embarrassing for you if you build up this shell of rejection, this false wall of hate, and then just eventually like it anyway when it starts winning a ton of races and all that good stuff. I feel like you should just do it now, right? And then it's fine. Like that, then no one will even remember.
No, because here's the thing. Like I said before, the car itself is incredible. All the things that they're doing with the car are incredible, especially at the prices that they're bringing them out at now. The prices will probably go up in the next couple of years, but at least this initial rollout that they're doing is fantastic. Just change the name. The car is great. Just swap the nameplate. That's all I'm asking.
It's too late. It's too late. That horse has left the barn and then was killed and beat to death.
And the barn has burned down.
That is also true.
And I burned down with it. I'm not changing my stance.
All right, whatever, man. I'll get you back with the next factoid.
Whatever you say, man. Whatever you say. Enough with this stuff. Let's
enough. He says enough. Tired of being wrong.
Enough. Let's get into the.
I heard that, Tristan. Don't worry.
I work with assholes. Let's get into the main topic. Remember, folks, before we started talking about Mazda and our driver's tests and neat car news and why the C8 isn't a Corvette, we were going to discuss our dream racetracks that we designed ourselves. We will do that right after this. Hey, we're back, folks, and we're about to get into tonight's main topic. But before we do, we just like to remind you real quick how to get a hold of us if you feel so inclined. We do have our very own website that Andrew worked a great deal on updating. It's awesome. Brand new site, checkenginepodcast.com. And associated with that, we have an email address, which is inbox@checkenginepodcast.com. We're also on all the social media outlets. So we have a Facebook. You can find us there if you search Check Engine Podcast. Andrew is patrolling the Twitter sphere for us.
Andrew is Bertoli.
Doing all that. I do both.
Andrew, where can they find us on Twitter?
At Check Engine Pod.
Not podcast, correct?
Nope, just Check Engine Pod.
All right, just making sure. Tristan, we have an Instagram. Where can they find us there?
Also at Check Engine Pod, not Check Engine Podcast.
So there you go, folks. Be sure to like, follow, share, post, DM, email us, reach out how and when you can. You can ask us questions to answer on air. You can let us know what you like or dislike. You can give us ideas for topics, anything you want. We want to hear from you. We want this to be a discussion back and forth, not just us talking at you. So thank you in advance for that. Now, to get back to the show, we are just about to dive into our dream racetracks. We have each designed one, the ultimate place that we feel, actually, the ultimate place to go race. So, Andrew, any other teeing up or any sort of frame up for this, or do we just want to dive into it?
No, I think we can just go. Man, it's interesting. I don't know that I would be so bold as to say that I find this to be the greatest place to go race, this fictional track that I've made up, and never managed to find a name for, which I'm not super happy about, but whatever. However, what it is, to me, is a collection of things that I think would be interesting to see.
Okay.
And it all started with a road that Tristan and I both know very well. There's a little road, literally like a subdivision / farm road out in the greenery of Wisconsin near us called Bryn Drive.
Ah, yes. I was wondering where you were going because there's one other one.
There's a bunch of them. Honestly. But the thing about Bryn that makes it so interesting is that, obviously, no one would speed on a road that's 25 miles an hour. You just wouldn't do that.
Never.
No.
Maybe the kids in Georgia.
Who would
How
tell
would they
them
know?
to?
Because they don't. Yeah, they don't know any better. You can't even blame them.
But this road is interesting because it's not that technical until it gets incredibly technical. And it's so interesting because, somewhat tragically, there's a lot of accidents and fatalities on this road because it has a very interesting feature, an off-camber corner.
Off-camber decreasing radius.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the way I've mapped this out would be coming, Tristan, on Bryn towards G, so going on the downhill. So the thing is, there's this off-camber decreasing radius corner that bombs into a really steep hill, or pretty steep hill. I calculated it as about a 16% grade, so that's twice as steep as the final hill at Road America.
Damn.
Yeah.
And then at the bottom of that hill is a 90-degree corner.
Yep. And the off-camber, it's downhill.
It is. It actually pitches in the middle of the corner from uphill to downhill. It's so the trick of this corner is, if for some reason, perhaps your car is on fire or you're trying to get a pregnant woman to the hospital, you were to exceed the speed limit going around this corner, the danger is taking your foot off the power. Because if you unload your car or motorcycle as you're going around that corner, you're done. You're completely fucked.
Right. It's a balance between not already going too fast because you'll have to slow down, and staying on the power so as not to unload your car. Because there's also a good chance that even if you don't unload your car, you just slide straight sideways off this corner.
Also true. It's a really interesting corner. And I'm actually getting ahead of myself because that is, in fact, a main portion of the final sector of this race track that I've built. Because you had to have that at the end. Like, you're not going to start with, you're not opening with that, right?
That's the grand finale.
Yeah. So I'll start at the start-finish line. One of the main things I wanted from my track, and the start was one of the things that I had the most trouble with, because I feel like there's a balance. I like the opening, the starting straight at Road America, but I feel like it's just like a tiny bit too long. And I feel like having a sharp corner right after it, there's like offs and there's some action there, especially on, like yellow restarts.
Yes.
But there's also, I feel like there's a tendency for that sharp corner to really start like immediate local yellows right after a restart, which is a bummer. It's like the biggest case of racing blue balls ever. So what I did after the front straight, which is just about a mile, what I wanted from exit of final corner to the entrance of corner 1 to be just about a mile. So it's a tiny bit shorter than the Road America one, but not significantly. Then I have a left hand downhill for corner 1 that continues downhill into corner 2, which is a bit of a sharper left. Then a long turn 3, again, sort of like Road America, but flipping back on itself into the first stolen corner of the track. What I want to do is take the carousel from the Nürburgring and improve it. That is a great corner. It's really cool, but it's also one of the slowest corners in all of motorsport because it's only partially banked.
Right.
And I'm wondering, with what I call the Velocette carousel. Velocette was the model of the first motorcycle to win at the Nürburgring. Yes, I looked it up.
Wow.
Find a name. So it'd be downhill into this carousel and uphill out, but I want the whole corner banked.
Nice.
Like evenly banked. I don't know the degrees. I couldn't figure that one out. Like not like a NASCAR bank, but kind of a healthy. I don't want cars like bombing ass into this corner, but I want them to be able to pull power through it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So just trying to remember, at least on the sims going through the carousel at the Nürburgring, if you want to keep it consistent with that all the way to the top, you're probably 15, 18 degrees, maybe something like that. Under 20, I would say.
I would think so. It wouldn't be anything super major, but I want a little extra ability for drivers to push through that corner as maybe even a possible passing opportunity through that corner if you've got the stones for it.
Yeah, think about that like a top to bottom dive bomb late break. Use the entire bank.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, let the banking help stop you on the other side, basically.
Yeah. Yep.
That's what I want to see. Yeah, exactly.
Slide job.
Right. If that's what that means, I don't actually know.
I say, not knowing anything better.
From what I see, he just yells that sometimes.
Slide job.
And maybe there is, maybe there is. But all right, so that is the carousel is 4, and then coming out of that will be an uphill right-hander for 5. Heading into a corner, I don't want to draw any. All right, it's not a kink. It's not of the kink. It's dog leg.
The kink.
It's a very subtle left hand after a little bit of a straightaway. Very subtle left hand. I love the kink so much. But what kind of lets it down at Road America is the very real possibility of a horrible accident if you try to stick it all the way through the kink. Because the wall is just right there. It's right fucking there. So what I did is planned it out so there can be a giant runoff area after this, not kink, dog leg, so that hopefully people can be a little more aggressive coming up out of 5 and into 6, knowing they won't immediately run their car directly into a concrete wall.
Fair.
So 6 is right after the kink is slight downhill into sort of an S's like 7, 8, and 9. And then 10 is a sort of Elkhart Lake style, slightly downhill, decreasing radius carousel, because that is just the coolest thing to see. No other reason. It just looks amazing.
Especially when you're standing, folks, there's a lot of really cool places to watch at Road America, but if you ever get there, just go to the very edge of the campground in the carousel, like in the middle of the inside of it. And they're above your head when you first see the cars on the left, and they're below your feet when they're off the other side on the right.
So
and
great.
Just hearing them kind of lean, and you can hear them in the throttle. They're kind of, they're kind of in and out and just kind of feathering
a little bit, a little bit of tire scrub, just a little bit.
Oh yeah.
That's awesome.
The 911s do that really well in that Yokohama series. They're probably the best ones to kind of, that you can feel, they want to break.
Yes.
But yeah, it's also like a nice opportunity to kind of get some space between the cars for the final sector, which is the Bryn Drive section. So coming out of that decreasing radius turn, that's 11 into 12, which is just a normal sort of right-hand corner. And then there's a straightaway with an uphill that goes into the 13 through 15/16 combo that I'm calling the Tabernacle Complex. I'm doing that racetrack thing where they just sort of put numbers in the middle of things. They're like, oh, yeah, that's a corner too. Yeah,
that corner looks like two corners to me.
Well, yeah, but that doesn't matter. That's not important.
Yeah. So I mean, like it's clearly a corner, but the racetrack designers go, it looks like two corners to me.
They do. So I already talked about this, what I'm calling the Tabernacle Complex, because currently this road is situated next to the Tabernacle Cemetery. So that is the biggest irony of Bryn. If you fuck it up and go off the road at that off-camber corner, you go into a field.
Where you need to be.
Yeah, you go into a big farm field. You will be looking at, as your car is on its roof, an actual honest-to-God cemetery.
Ironic.
Fitting. The one feature of this Tabernacle Complex that I didn't mention that is quite interesting to mention about real life is that after you get to the bottom of the hill, crank that crazy left hand here and start going back uphill into what would be corner 17. This would actually be a secondary, not kink, but dogleg. Because in real life, there's a giant ass tree that the road literally has to avoid because the tree is so large. We'll remove the tree for the track. However, the kink will remain. So we're in the final stretch of the track here. After that final little dogleg, I love the cinema and I love the appeal of the final corner at Road America. It's a nice broad sweeping corner. And then you just hammer it up a hill as hard and fast as you can to get to the start finish line. So that's what I have here. This is actually a left-hander and an uphill at about 8%, which is about what Road America is, straight up into the finish line, just as hard and fast as you can after that corner complex. And that is it.
That's a fantastic racetrack. I like the thought you put into it. I love the name of the Tabernacle Complex.
That one named itself. I was rather pleased with that result.
Yeah, I can just hear, a British sports car announcer, and there they go into Tabernacle.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Don't think I didn't hear that in my head.
John Hindhaugh. Oh, there's another off at Tabernacle.
And they would be.
As it always is. Yeah.
But so I did some probably horrible measuring and scaling based on what I knew I would like the front stretch to be. And I have the full circuit at about 6.5 miles, which I think might be too big.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think mine's not insignificant in that regard either.
Well, if you think about it, the Nürburgring, the Nordschleife, depending on who you ask, is anywhere between 12 and 14 miles. Le Mans is 8. So is it big? Yes, but not the biggest.
I guess, initially in my head, what I was thinking of in terms of scale was actually Canadian Tire, which is only like 2.4.
Yeah, it's a tiny little place. It's a tiny little place.
Is this a power track?
Obviously.
They all are power tracks.
It's always
total power track.
Obviously.
But no, and so the reason why it ended up kind of being at that scale beside the front stretch, I also wanted to keep sort of the whole Bryn Drive segment as true to its initial size and scale as I could keep it, simply because the straightaway leading up to all of those corners is such a great false sense of security. Like it's very easy. It's, starts to slightly go uphill. And then there's a moment where you realize the hill got steeper than you thought it was. And then boom, this corner just hits you, it just nails you, man. It's such a great driving moment. I mean, it doesn't matter what you're in. It doesn't matter if you're on a bike. Like, it's just such a moment. And then you hit that corner and you realize you're about to go straight down into a 90-degree corner and your brain just freaks out. It's so awesome.
That's fantastic. So are you adding more? Are you just keeping the general shape and grade, but like actual, maybe like FIA approved track widths, or is it just as skinny as that road is?
No. This would be nice and wide with tons of runoff and, make it as safe as possible. The illusion of the danger. That's what you want to keep.
So any racers on this course can feel free to send it, as it were.
Exactly. And that's another reason for like fully banking the carousel or making a little extra runoff area around something like a kink so that you can push through what are definitely great corners. I mean, the kink is so iconic, and so is the carousel. Like, they're just amazing corners with amazing track moments. Then maybe they could be a little more amazing. I don't know. I'm just saying.
No, it's a great way to think about it. I can already tell all three of us have thought of this in incredibly different ways. So,
well, all right.
Which makes this podcast great.
That's
Tristan,
right.
Tristan, you want to go, or do you want me to take next?
Sure, I can go next. Mine is a more of a deep thoughts TM deal than, because I used some tracks and I used a few other things, but the main thing, my whole goal was, with the exception of a little Road America homage copied directly from the track, everything else that I have are either roads or street courses. They're either public roads that have never been used officially for racing, or are street courses that are converted at some point during the year. And that's the kind of theme that I found. I actually started off this little research adventure just trying to include other types of races in the kind of racing that I normally like. So I'm thinking IMSA style, endurance sports car racing, but I was like, well, let's just add in some flavors of X other thing, which I will cover as we go along. And it turned into, these are just roads. So then I kind of went with that to make sure. So my track, I also didn't have a name. I bounced around a few possibilities as far as that goes. Just the road. There is was a possibility. There's a stretch that runs kind of along the top of a mountain, so I thought maybe calling it the Crag would be good.
Ooh,
Crag. But nothing really stuck. The outline, in my mind, the weird Rorschach test that this is, kind of looks like almost like a knight's helmet, so you could call it the Helm.
Ooh, okay.
But nothing really stuck. I haven't settled on anything. So a lot of possibilities, but nothing really stuck out for me. It ends up being just a hair over 5.25 miles long. Map that we will have for you guys to see, dear listeners, is I would assume not to scale. I tried my best, just based on just based on how long one thing was. All of the written out measurements are correct, but the track might not look right, because I did actually use the Google Maps measure distance feature. So the distances are correct. So where I started on this journey, I mentioned, was kind of different, bringing different types of racing into the type of racing I like. And a type of racing that I'd like to watch more of, in fact, and I would like to see elements of it in sports car racing, is the hill climb.
Okay.
So I took a 1.6 mile chunk of the Pikes Peak hill climb, one of, if not the most famous pieces of hill climb treachery in the world, starting at the Devil's Playground and going from there. Great names that they have there. So that is a obviously distinct uphill, varying grades, varying cambers, remarkably twisty, and a lot of big switchbacks, which there's a bit of a switchback in the corkscrew at Laguna Seca. Their various tracks have like an S's section, but these are real honest to goodness alpine switchbacks. And in the case of this one, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 switchbacks, and then you go charging off uphill with one more hairpin at the very end just to throw you for a loop. Two of the longest straight sections in this end in, significantly greater than 90-degree hairpins, which is always fun. Again, as with Andrews, I think obviously if we'd want anybody to ever race here, we want to make sure that we've got proper road widths and, runoffs and fences and stuff. So a little bit of the Pikes Peak danger is going to be missing. But I think we can take a lot of this information about track grades and corner angles and stuff and make something fairly exciting out of that section. After that, I was looking for not a palate cleanser because, as Andrew said, there's a distinct chance that in the kink, you just slide off and die. So it's not a palate cleanser, but I thought of it as more of a transition section where you go from the short, wicked technical section of the hill climb, and you have something that keeps you on your toes into what could be called the back stretch, I guess. It's one of two relatively normal straightaways that are not significantly uphill or downhill for the most part. This is the one that runs along the top. The Pikes Peak hill climb section would take you 1.5 miles up a mountain, and then the kink transition would run you along the top of the mountain. I thought that would be an excellent viewing position. You could see the exit of the kink, the entrance to the next section, and potentially you could see down the mountain and watch the hill climb section and the front straight if it's not too far away. It might be. You can probably see the cars, but you might not be able to see numbers.
I was thinking like Watkins Glen kind of style. If you're,
yeah.
You can see if you're up by what is that like
over there?
2, 3.
Yeah, exactly. But it's way over there. So post that transition, the next section we move into is actually something that we've kind of brushed past a few times. The Japanese street racing style, the Touge, which Grid touched upon. It's also one of the types of drift racing done in Initial D, that kind of thing. I was reading up on famous Touge roads, and one that I found a section that really fits is the Hakone Turnpike. And so there's 0.8 miles of the Hakone Turnpike that form like an actual S, but backwards. So I was actually considering calling it the Say, but I thought that might be too much of a pun. S backwards, but
very glad you didn't.
That makes up the greatest portion of your downhill elevation change. Basically, Andrew, think of it like 2 carousels strung together with a transition in the middle.
Okay.
So it's, you run down one carousel, you cross through the middle of the S, and then you go back the other way on another carousel. Significant elevation change and, a lot of angle. Could be quite fun. And Then what I forgot to label on here, Nick, and we'll get to why later.
Okay.
The next section is actually a section of Mount Panorama / Bathurst.
Yeah.
It's the Conrad Strait from Mount Panorama. Because there is some elevation change on there as well. That finishes the elevation change to bring you back down to the level of the starting line. And there's that kind of there's like a kink dog leg followed by like a 90-degree left-hander. I forget what that complex is called.
It is called the Chase.
Thank you. Yes, I did not label that, even though I knew it was a separate part. That just slipped by me. But so it's Conrad Strait into the Chase, just a little over a mile, 1.1 miles. And then and it might just be because of my experience with it, one of my favorite ways to watch the tail end of a lap or a race is through the final set of corners at Le Mans. At Circuit de la Sarthe, everything from Arnage to the start finish line, I think there's a lot of opportunity for passing. There's a short straight section where power makes itself known. You have the Porsche curves and the Ford chicane that bring nimbleness back into the mix. I think it's a place that anybody can can make the difference. That was one of the Audi drivers, I believe it was Romain Dumas, who had the ridiculous pass in there where he barely stayed on the track.
Yeah, he had to go off the curb. He made a 3-wide pass around one was for position and the other one was a lapper that was just kind of stuck in between a rock and a hard place.
And that's how he managed to win Le Mans that year. Given enough guts and the right equipment, that whole series can be very entertaining. So Circuit de la Sarthe, Arnage, through Porsche curves, to the Ford chicane, to the start-finish line. And although it's not a long straightaway, that straight down to the start-finish from Circuit de la Sarthe gets the cars wound up, gets the turbocharged cars turbo spinning for the charge back up the hill through the Pikes Peak section. That's the track. Andrew thought of a couple other kind of bonus items. Like I said, for mine, I was trying to think of the name. I also thought about where you might be able to pull something like this off. And this got a little business nerdy, where where would it even be viable? And where do they have enough interest, but maybe not a track like this? And where do you have terrain that the worst you'd have to do would be to recut into a mountain versus having to actually build one somewhere? So I actually had this in my mind, placed somewhere in Tennessee near the Smoky Mountains. They've got a lot of NASCAR, got some local dirt track, but I think a track like this, making use of their natural terrain, they're very proud of their mountains there, I think would potentially be a big draw. That's where I kind of envisioned it in my mind. But those are my couple extra items I came up with while I was working on this.
So, sorry, looking at your track map here, where would your start finish be?
Just after the Ford chicane, kind of actually where the line goes to.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
So kind of on that up curve to the right.
Yeah.
Right in that little section.
Yep. Just enough to get your foot fully back on the gas and start running back up the hill.
Nice. All right.
I could see it. I could see it. I like the idea of laying it on a mountain, essentially.
Definitely.
Like they did in Bathurst.
It's, right. Yeah, exactly.
Mount Panorama. They call it the mountain. That is, man, I never thought at all to do anything with Pike Peak or any sort of hill climber rally. That's a really good idea. What I like about that is, like, hairpins are always good passing sections. So when you have back 1, 2, 3, like back to back hairpins going back and forth, like you could get some really insane battles going on through there. A lot of crossover passes, or if a guy decides to be brave and if he can make it stick on the outside. The next one, depending on how late in a race you get and how aggressive drivers want to be, that could make for some exciting stuff that first sector of your track, for sure.
Definitely. Yeah, especially as tire strategy comes into play. And I always like elevation changes, because that's where going up, you've got, the big heavy cars have to, pull themselves up, but they also tend to have a lot of power to get up that hill. They are often not, turbocharged or anything like that. So you don't have turbos working harder to maintain the boost. They just kind of growl themselves up the hill. And then downhill, you've got, sure, gravity is your friend when you're heavy, unless you need to use your brakes. So, so there's kind of a give and take, heavy car, light car, uphill, downhill. I think you could be fairly evenly matched. So
it's a really good point. It's a cool place. It's a cool place.
Definitely power track.
that was my first takeaway. Complete power track. 100% power track. I'm starting to see it now where the Knight's helmet silhouette comes in.
Oh, you facing until now?
Facing to the right with the eye slot.
With the eye slot, yep. Like he's got his head kind of low, like he's meaning serious business. Awesome track. All right. That just leaves me, right, fellas?
Yep.
Yeah, let's see what you got. The king of racing, the track knower.
Well, you guys can see what I got. You all have this. So as I mentioned earlier, like the three of us thought about this in completely different ways. So Andrew based his off of an actual road near his house. Tristan brought in Pikes Peak and hill climb and different things like that. And I just went with from places I've been to sims to all the races I've watched on TV or whatever it is, like, what are my favorite sections of racetrack? And what would it look like if I were somehow able to Frankenstein them all together?
An apt word.
Yes.
And so that's what I did. So I did not take into account overall track length. So, Andrew was 6.5, Tristan yours was just over 5. Mine might be north of 20 miles. If
it's really hard to tell.
It's really, again, it just depends on if you do it to scale. But what my reasoning behind doing it this way is because a lot of the modern, like the newer racetracks that are out there, and like the perfect example I have, Tristan, you've been there with me, is Coda down in Austin, Texas. When they built that track, they took other sections of track from all around the world, and it wasn't to scale, but they paid homage to that as they went around. So this is just my ultimate way of paying homage to all these places. So for those of you following along, we can start the lap. You can see I kept in one of my screen grabs the mouse cursor. It was actually by accident, but it works perfectly because it points exactly the way I want to go. So,
yes, before we put these up, I'm going to put a direction of racing arrow on mine. That was on my to-do list, and I forgot.
Okay.
Oh no, but mine are numbered.
Yeah, you can follow Andrew's numbers, and you put an arrow by your start-finish flag. So you're fine.
Oh, that's thinking ahead. Yeah, past Andrew. Yeah.
So we're going to start at that little arrow that's pointing to the left. And this straightaway here, you start off exiting that chicane there at the Montreal Grand Prix Formula One track. And we'll get to why that chicane is in there. And basically that entire last section of the Montreal track is at the very end of the lap. So we're heading down the front stretch that starts at Montreal, but as you keep going towards what will be turn 1 here, you jump over to the straightaway at Monza, Italy. And your first two corners, turns 1 and 2 on my dream track, is the one and only Parabolica from Monza. This is the last 2 corners of the lap for a Formula One car at Monza. So a little bit tighter entrance, but then you're up through the gears and you let the car kind of drift out to the outside and build up the momentum to shoot down the front straightaway, what it would be at the Monza Grand Prix circuit. But as you get there, instead of heading towards the first chicane in Monza, the aforementioned Coda comes into play, because you head up what would be the front stretch at Coda, up that wall of a hill climb, as Tristan has seen. You know what I'm talking about here, into the hairpin at turn 1.
Tristan has climbed.
Yes, we have climbed it almost on hands and knees because it's so steep. But it's a great viewing area. So in this iteration of a racetrack, the cars are going to be coming in here with a boatload of speed up this hill to a huge stadium section, big grandstand seating up there, a lot of hillside seating, people with, camp chairs and blankets and that kind of thing. You basically apex this left-handed hairpin right at the crest of the hill. And then as you go off towards where on my little map here, it says turn 2, that is still Coda's turn 2, which is a downhill sweeper to the right. And then from there, a section of track that both of you will recognize, although for this iteration, I put it backwards. We head into the boot at Watkins Glen. So this would continue that downward trajectory down into what the heel of the boot would be, which in this case, instead of turning right, you would turn left. And then you head uphill into the toe, which is that little upside down 7. And then back around.
Numbers are all over the place.
Yeah, because I just screen grabbed them. So that's like the number on the actual track map where they came from. But so you head through the toe of the boot there, and then you keep working uphill into what are the laces. Now, again, if you're going the correct way at Watkins Glen, the laces would be a left-hand downhill turn, but this would be an uphill right-hander that leads you into, as Tristan had already talked about, the Conrad Straight at Bathurst.
And that's why he knows, well, Nick, he knows it anyway, but that's why I alluded to, that's why he knows what I'm talking about, because he already saw I had the same track section as he did.
It's pretty popular.
What was that, Andrew?
It's pretty popular, and 66% of hosts prefer.
66% of podcast hosts prefer
2 out of 3.
That's right.
Prefer the Conrad Straight. So Tristan already mentioned it. Elevation change there into that complex there, which on my map says 20, 21, 22. The right-handed kink followed by the left-right chicane there. The GT3 cars that run there, when like the 12 hours of Bathurst happen, when they go through that first right-handed kink, they're at about 175 to 180 miles an hour. And then they have just that little short section of track to drop about 100 miles an hour in speed to make it through that chicane. So super high commitment area. Passes happen there. A lot of offs. There's a ton of runoff there, big gravel, deserts there. So they're not really in danger of crazy major damage, but definitely a risky spot to attempt to pass. It can make for a lot of good viewing. Out of that section, they head down a little short chute into a tight left-hander, which would turn you on to the front stretch at Mount Panorama. But instead, I have it shooting down the hill into turn 8 and then into Road America's Carousel Complex. So that the turn 8, the downhill carousel section, and then all the way back out the other side to the kink is stolen from our favorite home track here in Wisconsin, Road America. Now, when you come out of the kink at Road America, you head down a long straight towards what is Canada Corner. But in my track, you head down a long backstretch from Watkins Glen into the bus stop chicane, right past where we camped a few years ago, boys.
Nice.
Right by the bus stop.
Right by the bus stop. So again, another super long section, high speed. You can get a good slipstream off of someone in front of you, and there's a great passing opportunity for the bus stop there. And I was trying to keep the transitions in mind as much as possible. So like out of the bus stop, there's a big right-hand sweeper. So I added a right-hand sweeper here, but instead this is the bottom half of the corkscrew at Laguna Seca. So what I did here is, my question here on my thought experiment was, what if we run the corkscrew backwards? Instead of going downhill, we go uphill. So out of the bus stop from Watkins Glen, they head through, in the real world, it is a left-hander, but they head right up the hill and then into the corkscrew chicane at Laguna Seca from out in California. Once they crest the top of the corkscrew, they head into what may be the most famous corner on the planet.
Yeah, it almost made it into mine too.
The complex at the Spa-Francorchamps circuit in Belgium, the Eau Rouge Radillon complex.
Oh, I love it.
Oh, it's fantastic. Formula One does it flat. GT cars barely a lift, and then they're back on it. The prototype cars, like the old Audi turbo diesels, they were doing it flat. So right as you get to where it says Eau Rouge on my map, it is a downhill left. And then as soon as you straighten the wheel out, you've got to crank it back to the right because you're going uphill through Radillon to a blind left-handed kink at the crest of the hills, and you cannot see what's on the other side. And you're doing it basically flat at 150, 160 miles an hour. Just a massive roller coaster. And then it leads you on to the Kemmel Straight, which is a slow, you can barely notice it, but it is an uphill climb. From there, you get to the top of that hill, but I inserted the top of the hill from Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, a place that you two will also remember. So right at where the pit exit is at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, where that bridge is.
Yep.
So you crest the hill and there's that big downhill sweeper into turn 2, and then you go back through turn 3 there. Andrew, I think you remember this too. We were sitting like in that little mobile grandstand section on the outside of turn 3 there, watching people barrel down that hill.
Yeah.
Is that where the minis had their slide fest?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I was trying to place it, but got it. Good.
So if you can just imagine the speed you're carrying up through Eau Rouge and Radillon down the Kemmel Straight, and now you're cresting it and having to go hard downhill left into that Canadian Tire Motorsports Park section, that is a roller coaster. Once they get on the gas out of the Canadian Tire turn 3, they're heading up towards another place that all of you will recognize, or that at least my two co-hosts will recognize, the Keyhole at Mid-Ohio.
Ah, yes.
That's a good one.
So that is a gradual uphill into the hairpin, and then again, right at the hairpin is kind of where the crest of the hill is. So as you're braking and looking for the apex, your car's pointing uphill, and as you're getting on the gas, feeding the throttle back in and exiting that corner, you're going back downhill and then down that super long straightaway into, what would be Mid-Ohio turn 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not going there. Instead, we're heading to the Oak Tree turn at VIR.
A classic.
Another classic. And this is another one where somewhat thought experiment, somewhat this is the only way I can make it fit. We're running this entire section backwards as well. So like the Oak Tree turn in real life is a double apex right-hander. But on this version, we are going to make it a double apex left-hander, but still super low speed, great passing opportunity here, especially coming out of my keyhole here, and down this straightaway. Now, out of there, I do like the area that we stayed in VIR, like we weren't too impressed with a lot of it, but we can agree that the Oak Tree turn was classic. And personally, I think the S's that run up to the Oak Tree turn are fantastic. Just from, to use your term, Andrew, the cinema aspect of it, just the how it looks to see them switching direction back and forth, rolling up through the hills, natural terrain. And
yeah, probably very similar to how I feel about actually the downhill S's at Road Atlanta.
Yes. Well, Tristan, you kind of get your wish because we're running this backwards. The S's here are downhill. It says it says climbing S's on the map, but because we're running it backwards, it's actually the falling or descending S's. Falling S's.
I like that.
The falling S's of backwards VIR. And
of RIV.
And if they survive the falling S's, they end up right at the carousel from the Nürburgring. So, Andrew, you and I both grabbed the same section of racetrack there.
Mm-hmm.
So another hairpin passing opportunity there. Out of the carousel at the Nürburgring, we've got the right-hander at the end of the long backstretch at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. So from where we camped for most of where we set up like our grill and our chairs by that tall tree at Canadian Tire for most of the back half of that weekend.
Yeah.
That big right-handed corner that was off to our right, where they were coming in a really high speed, trail braking all the way through. I put that corner in here, but instead of trail braking, and this is obviously going to be a place where they're picking up speed because they're just coming out of a hairpin. So that leads into my slowest section of track. Most people probably aren't familiar with Portland International Raceway and their festival chicane, but this is what I added in here. And as you can see, the track actually gets wider as it gets into the slowest part. So it opens itself up for a lot of passing opportunity in there. Guys can really send it and lake brake. And because in my track, they're coming in from relatively low speed anyway, this could be a nice little action spot. When they get out of the festival chicane from Portland, we end up at the right-handed hairpin from Long Beach Street Circuit. So this is the last corner on the Long Beach Street Circuit, and this corner is one of the slowest, if not the slowest corner in all of North American racing.
It's really sharp and really very narrow.
Very sharp, very narrow. You're rolling through here. You're basically coasting through in first gear. You're not putting a lot of throttle down early. Guys have to turn the wheel almost a full 360 degrees on their steering column to make the corner, probably 25 or 30 miles an hour. But it's very important because that leads on to a really long front stretch. So how you exit that corner and can get a slipstream on somebody will set you up for the next lap, possibly to make a pass down in turn 1 at Long Beach. What it's going to do for us is, in this instance, is set us up for another high-speed section, which is a downhill double left-hander back at Spa-Francorchamps, the same place that Eau Rouge and Raidillon are at. This is called Pouhon. Double apex Formula One is going through here at 165, 170 miles an hour, maybe one gear away from top gear, maybe a slight blip of the throttle at that first entry point, but then you're full bore all the way down the hill from there on out. Which leads us into the final section, finally, of this track, which is back into Montreal. Big hairpin, right-handed hairpin at the very bottom right corner there. Again, big stadium section, a lot of grandstands there, great visibility for some passing, which leads you on to that super long straightaway right afterwards and into what is called the Wall of Champions, is that chicane for the last corner there.
Love it.
And it's actually called the Wall of Champions because it's a very deceiving corner. Usually what normally happens is someone will try to clip that left-handed part of the chicane a little too sharp and bounce off a curb, which sends them into the wall on the right-hand side. And it doesn't matter your experience level, everybody has hit it. That's why they call it the Wall of Champions. Schumacher has hit there. Alonso has hit there. Gilles Villeneuve, who the circuit is named after, has hit there. And they actually don't clean off the tire marks there. They leave it there as a reminder. So you end at the Wall of Champions, and then you're screaming back down the front stretch towards the start-finish line.
I love it. I mean,
all in all, it's 90-some miles long, I think.
I would be so curious for you to calculate that.
I'll take it as a follow-up for this week, and I'll post it on Facebook. But it's my thing is just like find all my favorite sections of racetrack that I have the best memories from, either from, again, to use your term, Andrew, a cinema perspective, which just what is like the grandest to just take in as a spectator. And then also what's going to result in some real good racing action, like what's going to try to encourage more passing and aggressive driving. So that's the genesis of my track.
Totally not necessarily off topic, but nothing to do with this. You're talking about Spa, and it's so interesting that, I mean, it's beautiful. It's like, it seems like it's really beautiful. It's really high up on my list of tracks that I want to go see because of Eau Rouge and Radion, French words.
But French words.
But Tristan hopefully remembers the number one thing that sticks in my mind about Spa, and it has everything to do with the original unpatched version of Grid. Do you remember this, Tristan? Grid, a fairly realistic game for the time, right? Yeah. Realistic car damage, driving physics were on the arcade side, but they weren't like Need for Speed. But one thing about the physics engine in this game is that if you took any car and went full speed from Eau Rouge all the way to Lacombe and hit the corner of Lacombe, you would launch yourself directly across the open field and into Malmedy with no car damage whatsoever.
Yeah. Yep. And the funny part is sometimes there were flips, sometimes there were not, but you would always land on your wheels.
Always. It was absolutely the most perfect thing in the world.
It was the only way I raced Spa in that game.
Oh yeah, and way faster. Like you could go last to first in that one corner. You would just launch over everyone.
I do
it anyways.
Pro tip for anyone looking to beat Hamilton.
I distinctly remember watching you, Andrew, do it in a lime green Cayman.
Yes, that is something that I remember. Oh man. I just want to, how can we make these real? How can we
Well, I think the most realistic way is that there's got to be, whether it be Forza or Gran Turismo or Assetto Corsa, R Factor, whatever it is, has to release a track editor.
Oh, that would be so great. Well, you pointed out, I think it does actually work in Assetto Corsa. What was that? Bob's Track Builder?
Yeah, it exports meshes that work in a bunch of different games.
Okay, so Bob's Track Builder on Steam might do it for us, but unless we actually convince somebody to get these built and then go drive it, like I think the only way we can do this is if we lobby some of these game designers to put in a track editor or a track builder, and then we can at least somewhat bring these to life.
That would be a hell of a feature for Forza 8.
Oh, would that be fun? That would be great. And I'm actually really interested in sim driving both of your courses. Tristan, I have to, well, all the time I've spent going back and forth to your place growing up, like I've had to have driven that road at some point.
Yeah, I think I've taken you down it once. I'm sure that, and the other one that I was considering. I was considering, Andrew, building a hometown track, basically of all roads near me, and Waterville is definitely on that list.
Waterville's good, and I actually had that traced for a while as well. But the problem that I was having with Waterville is that while there are so many good parts, you could probably chop up that road and kind of bend it back on itself and make yourself a pretty good racetrack just off of that alone. The most exciting feeling portion of that road, which is, the hill section way out on the tail end in the middle of nowhere, I don't know that would be great for racing. I mean, it feels literally like a roller coaster on this road, but I just couldn't figure out a way to make it seem raceable, if that makes sense.
Certainly not for sports cars. That would be a rally stage.
Yeah, that is something to keep in mind too. Like, fun to drive doesn't necessarily mean good for racing. That's right. That's those two very separate things.
Right, and good for asphalt sports car open wheel racing is not good for rally.
Exactly.
So there's all sorts of different options we could go with. Could piece together our own rally courses stage by stage, for example.
Something kind of off topic here. When I first started kind of planning this out, I went to, I'm like, where can we build like a really cool street course, like a temporary course for maybe IndyCar, Formula One to come run. And there, if you do want to play around with that, if you're bored in this quarantine, like the easiest way I found was that you can go to like, there's something like a Map My Route. It's like for runners and cyclists. And it's very easily, you can just, it uses Google Maps and you can just zoom in somewhere and point and click your way around through city streets. I had one, I had a good one in Madison. I had a good one in San Diego. That was actually a pretty fun little exercise to do. So, I would encourage both of you guys just to like I tried to do it on an airport because I know they've had some races on airports before, but it wouldn't let you, because that's not considered public road. So it wouldn't let me map my route there. But I would consider doing that thought exercise, like where in Seattle could there be a cool street course, and then just go to the Google map of the town and just start playing around with it.
Actually related to that is a complaint that I would also like to bring up. For example, while technically pieces of the Nürburgring are public roads, you can't map on them at all, which is annoying.
That is true.
Like if you try to map on those roads, what it does is put a point near the public entrance to the track.
Yep.
And then a dotted line to your points. And you're just like, well, I can see it. I see what it is. I want to do that.
So here's the trick. This is what I did for Circuit de los Arts, because I know the same thing. Like, a lot of it's public road, but part of it is actually Circuit Bugatti. So it's not mappable, parts of it anyway. And if you right click in Google Maps, you can measure distance and put in points, infinite points if you want to make a curve, and just put in a bunch of points, and it'll A, highlight the route, and B, calculate total distance for you.
I know, but don't tell them how you could actually do it if you had the patience and or time.
Well, I had both apparently, so
just because
anyway.
I mean, that would probably have been infinitely easier than me, like I said, literally tracing on my laptop screen with a piece of paper and angling it around to like make the edges meet.
What old school.
I'll get to that in my thank you section.
Well, let's not keep the people waiting for that. Anybody have anything else, or you want to get out of here?
No, just that now. I mean, like exactly what you said, Nick. I really want to put these in some kind of accessible place because I feel like I have the need to know now that whether or not any of these are good driving or good racing or just dumb. I just want to know so bad.
Yeah, it's so please, Assetto Corsa, Gran Turismo, Forza, you've given us great tracks, you've given us good career modes, you've given us livery editors, you've given us car customization. Last thing on the list, track editors.
Hell yeah.
Track creators. Let's see it. Next editions of these games. Let's go. All right, folks. Thanks for sticking with us today. We appreciate you listening. We don't want you just to listen, though. We want to interact with you. So get in touch with us. What would your dream track include? Where would you want to place it? What cool street courses can you come up with using like a runner or cyclist map my route program that's online? Let us know. Send us your screenshots. We want to hear from you. So we already mentioned how to find us on the socials and online. Be sure to leave us a review if you get a chance, preferably a good one. And of course, hit that subscribe button too. It's free. You're going to get notified of anything new that we put out. And there's no really harm in that, is there? I don't think so. So please hit that subscribe button if you would be so kind. If you're really into what we're doing and you'd like to support us monetarily, you have two options for that as well. We have a Patreon page. You can go to patreon.com/checkenginepodcast or on our hosted page at anchor.fm, which is anchor.fm/checkenginepodcast. Right near the top of the screen there, you'll see that little support button. So two options for you. Every cent donated is put towards making this podcast a better experience for you. None of it goes back into our pockets. So we thank you if you choose to do so. Guys, who or what are we giving special shout outs to before we get out of here?
I want to thank not a neighbor, but a guy who lives just sort of around the corner because he's giving me things to ponder about as I take these walks. So over the past couple weeks, there was a big like double axle trailer in his driveway that had clearly some sort of car on it, but it was covered with a sheet. And one day the sheet's off and it's the rolling chassis of an old Golf. And then that disappears. And the next day, one of his garages is open and he's got a full lift in there with the body of an old Wrangler. And then that was gone. And then there's some sort of unidentifiable chassis in the other part of it. He has like a 2-bay garage on the other part of it. But I don't know where the Golf went. And I don't know where the Wrangler went. And I don't know what he's building in there. But he's building something, and it might just be Truckzilla.
That's awesome.
So thanks to that guy. I don't know what you're doing, but I like it.
That's cool. Tristan?
I'd like to thank my iPad and my Apple Pencil for the first time in their lives being used for an artistic purpose.
This is not an ad.
No,
it's not endorsed by Apple in any way.
No, we're not. But I have them for note taking, PDF annotating, things like that. So I'd use them, but like I grabbed it today to polish my map, and I was like starting to sweat because it was no longer just tracing. It was like making something, and that made me nervous because I don't do art.
Until now,
and I wonder if they feel happy that they were finally able to make art.
Don't ask us, ask them.
They're machines, Nick. I can't ask them.
Then I guess we'll never know.
Exactly. So, but no, it was. It made this whole process very easy. That even, well, I would say childlike, but kids are better at art than I am. So, an art moron could at least trace a passable track.
Yeah, what is that? There are like mad kids that are better at art than me.
Maybe it's a lack of hand-eye coordination.
I get offended. Honestly, I really get offended.
I think the three of us need to have like a who's worse at art contest, because I think I'm pretty bad also.
We do have some pretty adequate judges amongst the partners here.
Yes, we do.
I'm actually all about this. Let's talk about that more.
We can talk about that off the air. We don't need to let the listeners here. I would like to thank Mother Nature, because we haven't had not a ton of great weather. We've had some good days over the course of the last 6 or so weeks that we've been doing the safe at home quarantining. But this past weekend was brilliant.
Amazing.
It was absolutely brilliant. For the first time this year, is something I could say was damn near perfect weather that not only gave Claire and I a chance just to get out and go explore. It turns out there's a bunch of nature trails through the woods in and around my complex that I had no idea about. And we explored them all. We actually ended up on the opposite side of Lake Nagawicca by the time we came out.
Damn,
so not only that, but it brought the cars out. Like I said, that one trip down to Racine, I saw a Ferrari, an Audi R8, and a Porsche GT3 RS, all within the span of about 45 minutes of one another. That would not have happened had the weather not been great. So thank you to Mother Nature for giving us a great weekend. And as always, thank you to you, the listeners, for your continued support. We love hearing from you. We love recording this for you, and we cannot wait to speak to you again. But until then, stay safe, stay away from one another, and take care.